Hello everyone, this is Jolly Dingo or Jay Dingo. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do another one of these topics that is a little bit boring to watch but very important to understand what is happening, and that is going to be going through TACView in detail. So TACView is a program put out by Raya Software, and it's for analyzing flight data for various airplanes and various other things of missions. And it's not directly connected to DCS but can be used in DCS. It can also be used for any other flight simulators for analyzing what's going on, and it can also be used for real flight data, and some air forces around the world use it for debriefing and things after training flights. I'm usually going to be in full screen mode, which looks like this, but instead today I'm going to have the controls visible, and we're usually going to have the cursor turned off, but today I'm going to have the cursor turned on so you can see it, so you know what I'm doing, and I'm going to explain what's going on. And in this particular case, we have 3 blue aircraft and 1 red aircraft, and the red aircraft is a MiG-29A in this particular case, and the 3 aircraft are Mirage 2000s. There's 3 of them, and this was a flight that was done in DCS. As you're running, DCS will automatically output a TACView file that can be read in as you go, and that doesn't really take up any additional processing power much. So you can have 2 aircraft selected. One is the primary, in this case the MiG-29A is the primary, and the secondary over here is one of the MiGs, and you'll get a line in between them that shows how far away they are and what the aspect is. That is, if they're coming toward each other, then they're hot. If one is going away from the other, then it would be cold, and so on. And in this case, it tells you the separation, and the separation is 35 nautical miles to start out with. And you can either click on the planes to switch them, so I could switch to that one, or you can go to the list up here and it'll show you which ones you can choose. So I could choose the same one for the primary and the secondary, in which case you don't get a line between them, of course. Both the primary and the secondary have lots of data that are associated with them, and I'll go through this in more detail later, but the primary and the secondary. And there's also a list of events. The timeline goes along the bottom here, and the interesting events that happen are marked along the timeline, and they correspond to descriptions over on the side over here. You could also go faster or slower and pause. You can also go forward in time and backward in time, and you can do that very easily, and you can spin around and look at any view. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, and we'll be doing all of that as we go through this a little bit, but that's what you can do. And we're going to start out with us rather far apart. Also on these lists, there are other things, other objects that are grayed out, and that's because they aren't on the scene yet. Some of them are dropped fuel tanks, some of them are missiles that are fired, and it tells you what happened to that particular missile, if it did something interesting, right? So if it hits something, or if it destroys something, or something like that. In this case, this one hit one of the fuel tanks. These things can happen. So as we go, we're going to look at what happens, and we're going to describe what the different things are. One of the things, we'll turn this off so that we don't have that line on there, and we're going to play for a little bit. And so as you play, if you have secondary or a primary, it will draw tracks behind it so you can see what happened. You can also turn the track length shorter or longer, or completely off if you want, like that. So this purple thing that's falling here is one of the fuel tanks. That's how they are represented in TACView. When we come in, the airplanes actually look like the airplanes. The MiG-29 actually looks like a MiG-29 from all different angles for the most part. If we go to one of the Mirages and you zoom in, the Mirage looks like a little Mirage. But the fuel tanks just look like, and a lot of the other objects that are not necessarily combat units are just represented by boxes. And so this is a fuel tank, although the fuel tank still has data. If you put your cursor over each object, it'll give you some data, and you can set what data it shows you. You can also click and it'll give you the data all of the time. So it'll give you the data. I mean, so you can have different types of data for the ones that are not selected versus the ones that are selected. And you have a whole list of what types of data you want it to show in the box. So you can either have it turned on such that it's on all the time, or you can turn it off so it only comes on when you put the cursor over it. And also when you turn it on in general, there's other things noted like where airports are and things like that. Sometimes confuse people, sometimes they're useful. Usually I'll keep them off and just go when you go over the cursor. First, we'll show what happens in a actual event, and then we'll go back and look at some of the details. We're going to fly in. This is a BVR engagement, or Beyond Visual Range engagement. The MiG-29 is going to fire missiles as soon as it gets within range. I'll turn that off so you can see the missiles and things like that. And right now we're playing at 4 times real speed. I'll slow it down here to regular speed, and now I'm going to hit pause. And you can see we fired from somewhere on the order of, we can back up here. We were about 11 nautical miles apart when the MiG first fired. The idea is that as you go on, you can track information both for the plane. You can also track information for the missiles and see what the missiles are doing. In the free version, which is what we're going through here, because that's, again, the channel is primarily about people who don't have a lot of money, and so I'm not going to be showing them. And so in the paid version, though, you can also see when you have radar locks or other kind of locks between units, and you can also see graphs of, for example, the roll and the altitude and all sorts of things. You can get that. And for the very advanced versions, you can actually have, if you have multiple people in the system sending in real-time data, you can have somebody logged in and looking at what's actually happening in real time. With the free version, you can only analyze it after the whole flight is over and you've quit the program. We're getting data from the planes, and we're getting data from the missiles and various other things. I'm going to turn the tracks back on here just so you can see them. And again, for the channel, one of the reasons we do this circle at the beginning is if you don't, now they did get into formation to come after the MiG-29, but for some reason if you don't do the circle, or you don't somehow move your plane left or right or something like that, the AI doesn't necessarily notice that you've launched a missile at it. If we keep going here, and we'll speed up a little bit, basically there's no evasive maneuvers or any sort. The plane just gets hit and is destroyed. We can see here that we've gone past some of these blue boxes, and we now have over here that the MiG-29 fired a missile. What type of missile it is, in this case an R-27ET, which is a heat-seeking missile. And then we have that the Mirage was hit by it, and that the Mirage was destroyed by it. And those happened, of course, at the same time. The debris from the plane is just represented by little boxes. It's not represented by accurate-looking debris. And for the, let's slide back a little bit here, for the primary and the secondary, you can get these big, long, nice traces that show you altitude. For the other non-selected units, it only shows you a track of where they actually flew, not with altitude included. Just so you're aware of that. So again, we'll go back to this one is destroyed. The MiG then comes to the next one, fires to the next one, and this one also doesn't even notice that a missile is coming at it, and it gets destroyed as well. For the third one, we finally get some sort of evasive maneuvers. So I'll zoom in here. The MiG-29A is now firing 2 missiles at it, and these are heat-seeking missiles. The other ones were heat-seeking missiles too, but these are shorter range ones. The last remaining Mirage is going to evade it, and it's going to launch flares to try to decoy the missiles. So it's now dropping its fuel tank so that it becomes more maneuverable as it does that to hopefully avoid the missiles. And it also fires a missile at the MiG-29 as it does that, which is also a heat-seeking missile. So the MiG is also going to deploy flares to try to decoy it and also change direction so that hopefully the missile doesn't hit it. The missiles are all defeated. One of them didn't have enough range to get to the Mirage. The other ones were decoyed by the flares, it looks like. In this case, the MiG-29 recovers more quickly and reacquires the target and fires another missile. That missile, in this case, hits, and the MiG-29 is victorious. So that's how you would analyze things, and you can go through and look at in detail and see what you did. and see all the types of data you can get. But let's go back here to the very beginning, and we're going to select a secondary. And so we have a primary and a secondary. And we're going to play just a little bit. And over here we have various types of data for the primary on the top and the secondary on the bottom. And so the name is here. We have the data is the heading, that is what direction it's going. One is going 140 degrees by the compass, the other is going 320 degrees by the compass, so they're coming at each other. So that's the heading, and then there's what direction it's actually tracking. In this case, they're the same because they've been going straight. Then there's the true airspeed, which is how fast the wind is flowing past the plane, basically. This is in knots, and you can adjust whether you want it in imperial units or metric units. Then there's the calibrated airspeed, which is kind of like the indicated airspeed. For some reason, TacView doesn't show you the indicated airspeed, but it's basically calibrated for pressure so that it tells you how the plane is flying, basically. And this is the more important value for the actual flight if you're operating the plane, but as far as how fast things are moving, this is usually more important. Okay, then there's the Mach number, which is how fast it's flying relative to the speed of sound, which again is dependent upon the air pressure of the altitude that you're at. There's then the altitude above sea level, which is 6,500 feet in this case, which is different than the altitude above ground level because the ground has some height. And this is usually called angels, just because of the abbreviation for the most part. So you can be at angels 61 in this case, which would be 6,100 feet. Okay, the next thing here is the angle of attack, which is the angle between the wind coming in and the angle that the wings are attacking them at. And so if you get too high of an angle of attack, you'll end up stalling the plane. Then there's the G-forces that the pilot is effectively feeling. In this case, one would be just normally sitting there. So there's some sort of maneuver going on that he's slightly more than that at this point. Then there's the roll rate, and the roll rate is how fast the plane is rolling about the central axis, whether it's rolling right or left. In this case, it's not rolling very much at all. Then there's the turn rate, which if it's making a circle, how many degrees it's going per second around that. And then there's the turn radius, and again, he's not really turning, so there's not a turn radius, but it would tell you how tight the turn is. Then there's the ground speed. The true airspeed is not going to be exactly the ground speed partially because of altitude and partially because of the wind speed. Then we talked about angels already, or the altitude above ground level. This is the vertically how fast you're going up or down. In this case, he's going down by 4,000 feet per second at the moment, whereas the other one's only going down by 200 feet per second. Now that changes very rapidly if you pitch up or pitch down. This gives you the angle of roll that the plane is currently at, that is how far the wings are tilted from level. The pitch tells you whether the plane is facing upward or downward. In this case, the plane is facing upward from horizontal by 1.6 degrees, although it's still going downward. And this is the path. So the path alpha is relative to horizontal. It's going down at 3.5 degrees. Which corresponds to this level, to this going down. And then we also get in some of the planes, it'll tell you how much fuel you have in pounds, and then your current fuel burn rate in pounds per hour. And so you can keep track of those things as you go through. So that's all the details that are over on this graph. When we're doing the videos, I don't necessarily always show this graph, or sometimes I'll show it, but I won't talk about it. And so the detailed information is there because a lot of times the detailed information isn't as important, but just so you know what's available as we're doing that. Now, when you look at the actual aircraft, it'll give you a subset of that data by looking at it. And so I'm going to turn the labels on here so that they're permanently on. I can show you. So the top thing in this case is the type of aircraft, and then this is altitude above sea level, just the first two digits. So again, 6,500, so it's 065. And then the arrow tells you whether it's going up or down. And again, this airplane is going down. Okay, and then this is the Mach speed, which is 0.65. So 0.65 or 65% of the speed of sound. It then gives you the true airspeed in knots, and then the angels, that is how high you are above the ground in actual feet, the G-forces, and then the turn rate. And so these are the most important information a lot of times for things. Okay, and last little bits as we come in here, I'm going to turn off the labels again. And so there's two different lines here. And if I get rid of the trails and I turn off the line to the other target, you can see there's these two lines. And so one line shows the direction that the plane is actually facing. And so this is useful a lot of times because you can see where, for example, if he's going to fire the guns, where the bullets would actually head out, what direction. Or if you fire a missile, which way is straight. And then this is the lift vector, which tells you, first of all, perpendicular to the plane's wings, and then it tells you how hard he's pulling, or gives you a measure of g-force. And so if we zip through to where he's actually doing some maneuvers, so over here, you can see that that lift vector, if we start play, it's kind of pinkish and not too long, and as he banks, it's going to get much longer and turn redder, and the darker it is, the more g-forces he's pulling. And so right now, he's pulling about 2.9 g. As he turns, he lightens off of it, and so now we're only at 0.6 g. He turns again very much tighter to evade the missile, and in this case, he's pulling again 2.5 g. And if you pull, and again, we have more, 3.5 g in this case. If you get up to like 9 g or 8 g, where you're risking the pilot blacking out, this line will turn black. And so that's most of the basic things that we will use in most of the videos. But there's a couple of other things I'll show you, but I need a more complex situation to show you that. So here we are with a much more complex situation to show you a few other things. And so one of the things we're going to show you, we're going to go again just with one event or one primary source instead of two. And you can see there's a lot more things in this list of objects in this particular scenario, and we're just going to have one, so we get rid of those labels. But the red and blue domes here in this case are now the nominal kill ranges of the anti-aircraft batteries that are available. And so some of them are longer range, some of them are shorter, but the bubbles show you where is dangerous for airplanes. Now it's nominal, so sometimes planes can get hit from even further outside of that, but it's available. And you can turn those off if you'd like, so that they don't get in the way, but you can also do that. And so we're going to speed through things a little bit here to show you a couple other things. Now you can see that there's also, I'll zoom in over here, you can see there's also the ground units are represented by what they actually are, and you can see what they are. And you can also see that the actual artillery fire, I'm going 16 times real, so they're going really fast, but the actual artillery shells and all of that is actually also represented, and you can see when they're actually getting hit. And you can also see these are individual armored personnel carriers in this case. Okay, so let's go back over to our plane. We don't want to take forever, so we're going to speed up here to roughly 16 times, and so these planes are going to come in. Actually, we'll go to 30. There we go, 16 times. We'll go up to 32 times just to really get things zipping along. And you can see the artillery batteries going on. Now they're coming in, and so when, for example, the planes come in, this one has a anti-radiation mission. He's going to take out the anti-aircraft defense. And so as he comes in, you have missiles fired. Those missiles hit the anti-aircraft. I'm slowing things down now again. And once that's destroyed, the anti-aircraft is gone. Now there's a secondary anti-aircraft, so that also gets destroyed. And you can also see that the individual missiles or the individual bullets were also displayed. And then as you come in, and these guys are now going after the individual ground targets. And you can see when those get destroyed, you can see the actual missiles, you can see all the different planes. And so TACView can track many, 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 many things that are going on. So thank you very much for visiting the channel. Again, if you like what you see, like the video, and please always subscribe and hit the notification bell so you see whenever we have another video ready for you. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.